This story did not happen to me, but to my dad in the late 70s. It was the summer before ninth grade, and my grandparents had shipped my dad off to basketball camp to keep him out of their hair for a week. My dad never described the camp as fun or comfortable. It was more like a basketball boot camp. They would have boys get up really early and play basketball all day. Being mid-July in Maryland, it was brutally hot. One of the days during the week peaked over 100 degrees. Although there was a pool on campus, campers were forbidden to swim in it. My dad and his friends could not understand why they were barred from cooling off in this unused pool. Naturally, on this over 100-degree day, my dad decided he was going to go swimming. Around lunchtime, at the peak of the heat, my dad and his buddies slipped away from the basketball courts and started their trek down to the pool. The pool was just a few minutes away from the courts and down a hill. After jumping the chain-linked fence surrounding the pool, the boys began to strip down to their boxers and jumped in. My dad said he was apprehensive about jumping into the pool. It didn't look like anyone had ever swam in there before. The concrete surrounding the pool was broken in a million different places by weeds growing underneath. It had clearly been a long time since anyone tended to the pool. The pool itself was kind of half-assed. It was as if a construction company started digging the hole for the pool, but never finished it, and then someone filled the hole in with water. The water was incredibly murky. If you were swimming in the pool, anything deeper than your belly button was blackness. On the other side of the pool, my dad noticed some clothes folded up on a pair of basketball shoes. My dad noted this because the clothes didn't belong to any of his friends, and he didn't see any other swimmers, or people for that matter, around. My dad decided to ignore the fact that the pool was sketchy, mostly because it was so damn hot, and jumped into the pool. After a couple of minutes, all the guys started taking turns jumping off the dilapidated diving board at the other end of the pool. My dad stood on the side of the pool watching his friends show off doing tricks off the diving board and waiting for his turn. He doesn't even remember the boy's name, so I'll just refer to him as John, but one of his friends did a somersault into the pool and took longer than usual to come up out of the water. The other boys worriedly looked at each other. My dad describes the next few seconds as the longest, most confusing seconds of his life. He was confused by how John resurfaced. It looked as though he had 4 arms and there was something on top of his head. The other boys looked confused as well. John grabbed at whatever was on top of his head to push it off. He seemed to feel around until he figured out what it was, and when he did figure it out, there was a look of utter horror in his eyes as he let out a scream. He pushed the unknown object off of him and jumped out of the pool. As soon as the object was right side up and floating in the water, there was no confusion whatsoever as to what it was. It was a dead body, stone cold, blue, and swollen. None of the boys said anything to each other, but in varying states of horror, confusion, and disgust, the boys ran back up to the basketball courts. They told the counselors what they found, and the counselors called the police. It turns out a fellow camper had decided the heat was too much earlier in the week and went to the pool by himself. Somehow, he ended up drowning, and when John jumped into the pool, he happened to jump right under the boy's body and brought him up to the surface with him. That was the last summer my dad went to basketball camp. I'm a 27-year-old female, but when this happened, I was 13. I've always been short. I'm 5 foot right now, and I was much shorter when the story took place. I grew up in a small town in Maryland. It was close to the city and to the country at the same time, so there were rural parts, but my family lived in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood with friendly neighbors. There was really no reason to worry. Nothing special ever happened in our area, and there was very little crime. My friends and I spent our childhoods running around the woods behind our development. We would play games like flashlight tag and go wading in the creek in the summer. As we grew up, we all gathered at the reservoir to smoke, drink, and talk. We were happy in our surroundings. This was home. I felt safe, for the most part. One night, a friend and I had made plans to meet up and go down to the reservoir. It may sound boring, but I was 13 and I still got a rush from sneaking out of my house in the middle of the night. My bedroom was in the basement, so it was really easy to sneak out a window whenever I needed or wanted to. So, I read for a while and waited for my mom to go to sleep. When I was certain that she was in bed, I got my shoes, grabbed my flashlight, opened the basement window, and climbed out. The basement windows are directly under our back porch, and our back deck wraps around the driveway to the side of the house, so there was an easy path that led under the porch out to the back gate. I tried to be as silent as possible, and was delighted to find that my dog was inside and wouldn't whine to follow me. I made my way out of the yard, down the driveway, and up the street to my friend's. I felt free. My friend lived up the street, and the moon was full, so I wasn't scared as I walked quietly up the street. I felt good, and it wasn't too hot out, so I took my time. But gradually, I started to feel weird. This was a new, strange feeling for me, and it happened so quickly. I suddenly felt as though someone was watching me. I quickened my pace, but at the same time thought, "Stop being ridiculous. There's no one out here." I tried to push the fear out of my mind by willingly making myself walk slower. I think I was trying to walk my way out of being afraid. I got to my friend's house, and although he was supposed to leave his light on and wait for me to come get him, his desk light was turned off and I could see him laying in the bed with the light from his hallway shining into his room. I knocked, but the kid could sleep through anything, so I knew he wouldn't wake up for a small knock. I stood there for a while. I wasn't tired, and I really wanted to go to the reservoir that night. Heck, I wanted to go anywhere. But I knew he wasn't going to wake up. For a fleeting moment, I thought about going to the reservoir by myself. I mean, I have a flashlight, and I know the way. It could be an exciting adventure. But I quickly abandoned that idea as another thought crossed my mind. I suddenly was aware of my surroundings again. I saw my driveway in the distance, and everything looked okay, but something didn't feel right. I think it's worth noting that I was only up the street from my house, so I was super close. It wasn't as if I sneaked out to the bad part of town or anything. Still, I couldn't shake that feeling that I was being watched. As I made my way across my friend's front lawn and then into my street, I started jogging down the street. As I ran, I had this growing uneasy feeling that whoever or whatever was watching me was now following me too. I couldn't tell for sure, but I thought I heard the sound of feet on the pavement behind me. I started running faster and refused to look behind me. I didn't want to see if there was something behind me, and I didn't want to feel silly for making myself scared if there wasn't. I kept my eyes on my driveway that was finally getting closer and closer as I ran. I was going to make it. This thought helped me run even faster, and I finally reached my driveway and dashed up it, part of me thinking, "This is stupid. You look stupid running around like an Olympic runner in the middle of the night. It's all in your head." But part of me felt differently. That's the part of me that told me to keep running. The fear was very real at this point, and I was drowning out my logical thoughts. I finally reached the top of my driveway, and I remember scrambling over the fence rather than fiddle with the latch. I was so happy to be in my yard. To my surprise, my dog came out from under the porch to greet me. My dog was a small, gentle Shetland sheepdog. Think Lassie, but smaller. In fact, her name was Lassie. She never bit anyone, but she did bark a lot. She wasn't barking then, so I was happy about that as I ducked under the back deck and sat under it by the basement windows catching my breath. I started whispering to Lassie and telling her that I was an idiot for thinking that someone was following me. I started laughing at myself and was sitting by the windows when Lassie suddenly howled so loudly that I almost yelled in fright. The next thing that happened made me want to scream, but I quickly found out that I couldn't. I could only just stare in terror as Lassie dashed over to the side of the house that was maybe 5 foot away from where I was sitting. The back steps of the deck led to the driveway, and there's a spot right after that, before our chimney, where you can peek down and see under the porch. That's the spot Lassie went racing to. She started barking ferociously and howling like she had never howled before. That's when I heard something else, someone running away. I could hear it clear now. I threw open the basement window and I dove headfirst inside before slamming the window shut and locking it. I would like to say that I learned from this and never again snuck out to go anywhere in the middle of the night, but I can't. I was 13. I was invincible. This really scared me at the time, but once the danger was gone, I felt okay and I continued to sneak out with my friends. However, I never again met them at their house. I made them sneak over to my house before going anywhere. I had more close calls, and several creepy things happened after that, but this was the only scary experience I have had by myself. To this day, I kick myself for being so naive and going anywhere by myself at night. I shudder to think what could have happened if I had not run home when I did, and I cannot believe I even considered going back to the reservoir that night by myself. I honestly feel like I would have not come home if I would have chosen to go there. I still have questions though. Who was watching me? Why did they follow me? And the one that really frightens me, why the hell was I so hell-bent on talking myself out of being afraid? I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right, but it was like I was trying to argue with myself the whole time too. It wasn't all in my head. There was someone watching me, and that someone decided to follow me back to my house. If Lassie had not been alerted, I would still be laughing at myself for letting my imagination run wild. So, if you ever feel like you should run, run. It may seem silly, it may make no sense to you at the time, and it may just be down the street from your house, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you left a like, shared it with your friends, and subscribed for future content. I post at least 5 new videos a week, so I would highly recommend you subscribe to stay up to date. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. Just a quick note I wanted to add to the second story. Supposedly, scientists are actually able to say that we do actually have a gaze sense. So if you feel like you're being watched, most likely you are. Supposedly it's something that almost every animal has, just as a safety mechanism. So I wouldn't recommend second-guessing nature. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.